All right, so in this video, we're going to talk about how do you know? Now, it's important to emphasize that we don't just do analysis to do analysis, right? Usually you're doing analysis to fulfill some larger goal or aim, right? So for example, if you were in a writing class, you might be doing a rhetorical analysis, and in that essay, you might be trying to explain why given techniques by an author create a given effect or persuade an audience. Or let's say that you're in a public health class and you do a statistical analysis in order to illustrate the effectiveness of a vaccination program. Or finally, let's say you're in an environmental science class and you do a cause and effect analysis in order to explain the relationship between industrial pollution and the health of a local ecosystem. So my point is that when we're doing analysis, it's usually for some larger goal or aim. And it's a goal or aim that others might not willingly accept. So you're using analysis as a tool to demonstrate your claims. Oh, didn't see you there. No, I'm just kidding. Now, I know on the surface it might seem like this is just like a big, huge waste of time to discuss things like analysis, but I would argue actually that the how question, how do you know what you know, is actually the most fundamental and most important of the three questions. And in fact, it's so important that we're going to devote many different videos to exploring how you demonstrate your reasoning to your audience. But in this video, I just want to go over a couple of different strategies that I think are useful. To understand why explaining how you know what you know is crucial, I think it's important to understand that your audience is an academic audience. And generally, they are trained in what's called skepticism. Skepticism is when you withhold belief until belief is warranted. You're basically saying, look, I'm not going to just take your word for it. Where's the evidence? Where are your reasons? How did you form that conclusion, right? So most of your audience is being careful. And that's because in science, generally speaking, we are viewing science as a kind of pursuit for objective truth. And we realize that people can make mistakes all the time. And so that's why a scientist is careful about their results and they test whether or not a hypothesis is correct. So what this looks like in your writing is that you'll find that I will often try to prove you wrong in your essay. Okay, and this is not me trying to be a jerk or trying to be mean or just in denial. It's me being careful about what to accept as truth and testing out other hypotheses. Well, did you consider this fact? Or what if you interpret it from this perspective, right? That's me really testing your claim. And what results from that is the strongest, most accurate, and the most worthy claim. So you can almost think of it as like a survival of the fittest, where only the best arguments are the ones that remain. Those are the ones that we have the most confidence in saying, I think that is true, at least provisionally. When answering the how do I know question, I like to think of the following things. How do I know that this is true? Do I have evidence for this claim? Is this evidence reliable, sufficient, and relevant? Why does this evidence support what I'm claiming? All right, so I'm not going to lie to you. Explaining how you know what you know is very difficult. And as I already said, we're going to devote quite a bit of time in this class and other videos in discussing different methods and techniques to do so. But I just don't want to go over two best practices or strategies that you can implement to take your analysis to the next level. And the first one is it seems rather intuitive and obvious, but to stick with your claim. So a lot of times students they'll start writing and then they'll get distracted by other details, or they'll just start summarizing. And you have to remember that your reader is a skeptic. So they're going to be reading your paper and going, well, but why should I believe the thing that you stated? So if we're not staying focused on that, then obviously we're not going to fulfill that goal. So for example, if you were writing a rhetorical analysis essay and you were arguing that the author's use of hardships and discussing their hardships would evoke sympathy in the audience, and then you start talking about like random other experiences, like their word choice, or and also they would get angered, and yet your reader is constantly thinking to themselves, wait a minute, you said that the audience would feel sympathy, but you never explained why him talking about hardships would do that. So this is why we have to stay focused on our goal. So instead, what I could do is take a sociological angle, explaining that audiences might feel sympathy due to having a shared social experience. Or I could take a literary perspective and explain how the author's vivid portrayal allows readers to immerse themselves in the experience and engage with the character's suffering. Staying focused on my claim is what adds depth and demonstrates reasoning effectively. In order to help me do this, there's a few things that I like to do, one of which is to have topic sentences, or sometimes I will literally find, okay, what's the one word that describes the claim of this paragraph? And I'll write that down and stay focused on that. I often like to also refer to that claim as I'm writing. Again, these are all techniques that I'm using to stay focused on my claim. The final tactic I want to talk about is to say more about less. So obviously this is easier to do when you're focused, but I think it's helpful to remember what writing is. Writing is a form of communication. I like the quote from Stephen King that writing is telepathy. It's basically the sharing of minds. And I think a lot of times we don't realize that. When we're writing, it just makes sense to us. And we write down our reasons and we just think that our reader should just be able to pick it up and they'll also come to the same understanding that we have. However, they don't have the same experiences, values, and worldview that we do. So they're not viewing the text from our brain, right? So, and we usually don't have the ability to literally be there over their shoulder as they're reading and explaining, oh, well, this is what I meant here, right? Instead, the writing has to speak for itself. So that's why I think this say more about less strategy is actually a really powerful tool. Now, students often fear that they're going to be overanalyzing or boring the audience, but I think the opposite is true. We're constantly relying on ideas and understandings to interpret information, but we don't provide that context to our readers usually. And without that depth and clarifications, readers have to fill in the gaps themselves, and this leads to misunderstanding or just plain disagreement. Well, that's all for this one. Take care.